Hi, welcome to part two of our Effortless video series. Today's topic is going to be effortless action. So, what is effortless action? The goal is basically to get to a point where you can try without trying. Our movement, mental or physical, should be smooth, natural, and instinctive. Now, you can probably think of some things that you can do where you're trying without trying. Maybe you're really good at a musical instrument or a sport or a skill like crocheting or something where it's really easy. You pick it up, you try without trying, something good happens. That's probably because you spent a long time practicing and getting better at it. So that's kind of what we're going to try to do with our mindset with school. So, what's the point here? Basically, more effort does not always produce better performance. And in fact, more effort frequently sabotages us. So, a lot of students think if they just study for 8 hours a day, they will get an A on every test. But that's often not true. And sometimes those students do worse on exams. And it's kind of a paradox as to why. But we're going to come up with some strategies for how to avoid this pitfall. Do you sometimes double down on effort the week of a big exam? This is what I mean by if you think you need to study 8 hours a day the week before an exam, you think you'll do better. That's usually not helpful. If you have spread the studying out and done only half that studying, it would probably be more useful than trying to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning every night of the week before a big exam. So, this is called false economy. Things get worse the more you give over to the effort. And this just gets even worse and compounds if you do something like pull an all nighter and let yourself not rest enough, because sleep is actually one of the best things you can do for yourself when it comes to any kind of performance, especially an academic performance, so an exam. Okay, so let's go through some strategies for this. Lesson one here, we're going to define done. We tinker with things at our own peril in numerous ways. You can probably think of this. You could be done with an essay, but you reread it and you edit it for another hour. And that was an hour that maybe wasn't fully wasted, but the essay might have been perfectly fine an hour ago. So, another example is that we might spend way too much time trying different paths to a solution on one single exam question, or we might try to solve it another three ways to see if we get the same answer. And we might get a different answer every time. When in fact, if we'd relied on our instincts, we would have just done it, we would have moved on, and we probably would have gotten the right answer. We might spend 6 hours trying to perfect wording in an essay or a lab report. That's similar to the example I just gave. But that's not great because sometimes the homework or the assignment or the problem will expand to fill the time you give it. So if you come up with a definition for done, then when you reach it, it will be obvious and we can put it away and move on. So it helps to be very specific about what you actually plan to do. So instead of study for chemistry on your schedule, you should write something like complete 10 to 15 stoichiometry problems, check all answers, and attempt to redo incorrect ones. Schedule tutoring if I can't figure them out. That's really specific. You'll know when you're done with that. So lesson two is just start. Don't wanna? That is super normal. Whether it's I don't want to do my chem practice, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to write my essay. That's pretty normal. You're not a failure for thinking that. And a lot of students think that they are. What we're going to suggest that you do in this case, take the minimum viable action, just tiny little bit. Open the textbook and a fresh Google Doc. Grab a piece of paper and open the problem set. Write the first sentence. Physically go to the gym with your gym clothes on. That's it. Maybe even just put your gym clothes on. Like whatever the thing is that you're trying to do the first step. It always involves the first step, whether that even involves any work or not. Just do that thing. And we like to suggest that after taking this minimal viable step, we focus on something called microbursts, which are small bursts of very focused energy. So what could yours be? Think 10 to 15 minutes. Let's say you're in Math 151. I will work on Math 151 problems for 10 to 15 minutes. I will review Bio 140 flashcards for 10 to 15 minutes. I will write my Nth to 11 essay for 10 to 15 minutes. That's all. Put on a timer. You know what? When that timer goes off, you'll probably be kind of in the zone. You'll probably be like, well, I'll just keep doing this. That's kind of where we want to get to. But in order to sit yourself down and do the thing, sometimes we just have to promise ourselves that we only need to do this for 10 to 15 minutes. Next lesson, simplify. How can you remove steps in the process of something to make it easier? What we want to do is find the minimum number of steps it takes to complete a task, whatever that task might be. So, I will do my homework at the library is helpful because if you get stuck on a problem, tutors are readily available. You don't have to then open up your schedule and say, well, when am I free? When are there tutors around? When can I go and get some help on my chemistry problems that I don't understand? It would help if you just did those chem problems in the library where the tutor already is. And then when you get stuck, the tutor's right there. So you don't really have any excuse for procrastinating. Another example, I will review chem problems after lecture. This is good for a different reason. Your brain is already in chemistry mode, so it's not hard to kind of get yourself mentally to that place. And you can park it in Meijer for 45 minutes and do some practice. There are all sorts of little tables and couches and little places to sit in Meyerhoff. And a lot of students use them for studying. So you can be one of those students who finds a spot, it's nice and quiet, and you spend 45 minutes between this lecture and your next lecture working on chem practice problems instead of going to Starbucks and wasting time. Lesson 4, progress. The point of school is to learn. You are not supposed to be perfect at everything when you start. The point of school is it gives you the opportunity to become good. So if you get a bad grade on your first exam in a class, that's not really the worst thing ever. And it's also not really something that should maybe even be a surprise because you don't know this thing. And maybe you don't know how they're going to ask you to demonstrate your knowledge of this thing on a test. And so having some familiarity with that, is going to be helpful, and it's going to help you then start to figure out how that teacher thinks and how that teacher writes questions for their exams. So, another way to get to that point, make failure cheap. Do practice problems that don't count for homework points. Take or create practice tests. Attend tutoring and have someone explain the correct solution to a problem. The more you let yourself fail without a cost of a grade, the better you're going to do. The more practice you're going to have by the time the failure is no longer so cheap. So what you want to do is give yourself every opportunity to fail before you actually have to get to that point. Lesson 5, pace. Slow equals smooth. Smooth equals fast. Don't rush yourself when you're learning. Pay attention to what is going on and give yourself appropriate resources and time. If you work on things slowly, eventually they're going to get faster. That's what this means. But if you speed up, you're going to learn things incorrectly, and it's very hard to unlearn something. That being said, we don't want to go too slow because that's going to cause us to lose momentum. So we want to establish some upper and lower bounds to each study session. So complete between 10 and 25 practice problems for Math 151 today is good because you'll get at least 10 done. And if you're on a roll, you want to keep going, let's go all the way to 25. So that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back for one more video on Effortless with part 3.